Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, wherever you are, New Zealand, Australia, India, Pakistan, North America, South America, Europe, Africa, or somewhere I'm sure that I have missed out. Great to have you on board this afternoon as it is here in Europe. And today I have a special guest, Shrikari, who has contributed for Popcorn Tennis. Those of you that tuned in yesterday will have seen me speak to Owen, who's also a contributor for Popcorn Tennis. He's also a physicist, and I'm sure he won't mind me sharing. And anybody who follows him on Twitter will be aware of his allegiances on the tennis court. Shrihari, Novak Djokovic fan, physicist extraordinaire. Let me know first of all, where can we find you on Twitter?
Yeah, my Twitter handle is SriHariRavi12. It's pretty straightforward. Just my first name and my surname, and then the number 12. Um,
And tell me, how has your day been today? What have you been up to regarding Twitter and speaking to tennis fans, let's say?
that's the elephant in the room. Yeah, so it's been a pretty busy day. Let's just put it that way. A lot of back and forth regarding who is Rafa Nadal's biggest rival, and yeah, probably was pretty much engaged with that the entire day. But other than that, it's been all right. How was your day been?
Cool. Yeah, not so bad. I've pretty much stayed away from that on this occasion. And to be honest with you, I found myself trying to kind of keep away from it in general. In fact, I don't even need to try because as a Rafa fan, so we're on opposite sides of the tennis court, so to speak, and it's great to share this YouTube moment with you, Shrihari. When things are going well, and they have largely for the last sort of 7 or 8 months, these things don't bother me. And by the way, in terms of who is Rafa's biggest rival, well, it's kind of obvious, really, particularly regarding the last 10 years, that again, I won't really engage in that because it's just, and it's also kind of irrelevant. And I look at most of these things, and I see it as well from Rafa fans who tweet certain stats about numbers of drop sets on the way to slams, and then Novak fans will tweet numbers of matches come back from 2 sets down to win slams. And you can go on and on with all of these stats, numbers of points dropped on the way to a slam, numbers of backhand winners, numbers of times approach to net, etc., etc. And I just find it mostly and largely irrelevant. What do you think, Shrihari?
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, you're getting your hands on the trophy. I think from the player's perspective, that's all that should matter, really. Sure, I mean, when we look back over the years or the decades, we can argue who's had it the toughest or relatively easier. But I think you really cannot. I don't know what that is.
Don't worry, don't worry. It's just a
Right.
fan making a
Yeah.
comment.
Okay. Flattered. But yeah. So at the end of the day, I guess we could have discussions about that. But I don't think players really um, bother much, especially when you're winning in tens and twenties of Grand Slams and you're competing with the big dogs right here. Once Novak got to his 10th slam back in 2015, he's that was pretty much when he set his eyes on Roger Federer's tally of Grand Slams because they started to get realistic. That's when he entered the double digits.
Yeah.
I don't think he really would have cared as to who he would face or who would probably go out in the what we got before the second week or whatever. I don't think players are really not really not as much as we are bothered about all of these intricate details, so to speak. But yeah, I just think it's just what all of this does point to is that these three of them, or let's say two of them in this case, Novak and Rafa, is so even keeled that you have the sort of mental gymnastics that come into play. Oh, who is played the most number of top 10 players, or who's played the first time Grand Slam finalist in a Slam final, or who's played a player outside the top 10. Because I mean, at the end of the day, it's still a it's still it's the gold race is on for as long as these guys are healthy and they can compete at the highest level. Yes, Novak got me curious, but there was similar sort of discussion going on when Rafa got Kevin Anderson in the
Yeah,
2017 US
yeah.
Open.
But
Same again, a player.
when you're winning,
Yeah,
honestly, it doesn't. Listen, if Rafa wins the next 5 slams without playing a player from the top 20, you don't care. You really don't. I mean,
yeah,
the only thing I will say in tennis, which is slightly different to other sports, especially where identity is involved, is actually you kind of. There was a part of me, for example, as a Rafa fan, that actually wanted Novak to beat Sinner. Not a lot, but there was a part of me that wanted to see those two in the final, and of course, want to see Rafa win that with all my heart. But how do you feel, Shahiri, by the way, when you're watching Nadal? Are you desperate for him to lose? And if you are, does it come out of a desperation for Novak to win, or is it because you fear him as a rival? Is it because you don't like Rafa Nadal, or is it a mixture of everything?
yeah. When that does happen, when I want to lose pretty desperately, let's say. I mean, I've never really wanted player to desperately lose unless his name is Serb, let's say. But
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, even Federer in his prime. I mean, I pretty much grew up disliking Federer for the longest time because of the comments he made towards Novak and even some of the press conferences where he was really disrespectful. The most infamous one being the U.S. Open 2011 semifinal one. But with Rafa, I mean, likewise, I did want him to get past Taylor Fritz for two reasons. One is I didn't want Nick Kyrgios being in a Grand Slam final, and it would have been. I mean, it was quite fortunate that he got them in the first place because I mean, a healthy Rafa, you can't really give. I mean, you can't really say for sure that Nick would have made the final. We've seen the last 3 or 4 matches that have gone Nadal's way, even though they've been really tight, 4 setters, and even the 3 setter they played at India well. So Nick served for the first set. So those are two reasons. And yes, I did want a Novak versus Rafa final because, well, not really because I wanted an epic. Let's just say. I mean, I know that that match would produce a lot of great shot making on a fast surface because Rafa, as we know, is really gone down in foot speed and a lot of his balls. If you see these days, it's a lot of his shots. They just barely make it past the net. They drop short. I did notice that a lot in the Australian Open final against Medvedev. The first set and a half, it was only from the beginning of the third set from this latter part of the third set that he started painting the lines and make Medvedev move from side to side. So I think that also doesn't make for a really enjoyable experience like we saw against Zverev. That was the case there as well. But I mean, if I'm being very honest, I did want Novak to get Rafa back for the RG quarterfinal because I think that match. I thought okay, that would be what do you call Novak's like Phoenix like moment like it was last year because he was destroyed completely in 2020. It was just a forgettable year in every aspect, off court. I mean, on court not as much. He's pretty much undefeated for 37 matches if you're willing to ignore the default in the U.S. Open fourth round. But from there on, it was just. I mean, there were a few losses. I mean, there was one to Sonego, which was his heaviest defeat to date. But other than that, it was pretty much a forgettable season for him. And 2021, of course, he plays Rafa again 8 months later, and then you see that match. It's almost deja vu of their 2020 final for the first 40 minutes or so. But then, the tennis he started to produce, notwithstanding Rafa not being at his best for, obvious reasons, his foot was bothering him.
I'm just
Uh,
going to interrupt you there,
and
Shahiri, because I think a lot of
yeah,
Rafa fans love to go down this route about the foot and blah blah blah.
yes, of
But
course,
but
yeah,
listen, that third set that they played, I mean, Schwartzman said at the time they're playing tennis from another planet. they were just unbelievable. The foot is possibly does come into play in the fourth set, but by then Novak has got the momentum and is doing unbelievable things for 3 sets. And by the way, so many matches are like this, where an opponent may have a slight twinge, may have a slight issue at some point, and as a result, perhaps the opponent wins. But I look at Novak's win in 2021 in that semi-final, but also the tournament as a whole, and I look at it as an unbelievable Grand Slam victory from an unbelievable tennis player. We can
Yeah.
all debate all day long about the wheres, the whys, and the hows, but something you cannot debate is that he has won 21 Grand Slam titles. It may end up being 25, or it may end up being 30, as Goran Ivanisevic hinted at today in an interview. Um, and and to be honest with you, the GOAT debate, I almost find, because there's so many of these nuances and stuff, to be honest with you, it's almost irrelevant right now anyway, because none of them are finished. And to be honest with you, I wouldn't be surprised if Novak continues for another 5 years. What I'd like to find out from you, Shahiri, though, as well, is about, for example, somebody said before we went on air today that they said that they didn't identify with you as a Novak fan. And what do you think they mean by that?
Or she
You're
said,
not. They said that you're not the average fan, and I don't really understand what they meant by that. So I actually asked them, but they didn't respond.
yeah. So I guess that means that I don't play to the gallery and don't support everything he says or does. So I guess by default, I'm a true fan, quote unquote. I guess according to a lot of these people, and it's worth mentioning that this person was actually a Federer fan until 2011. It's kind of ironic coming from her. But anyway, I guess people are free to say what they want to say. But I, well, you know, I did put out a thread regarding Novak's recent post, and what people didn't really get was that I didn't have a problem with him thanking his fans. He was completely right in doing so, and if I were in his position, I would have been just as overwhelmed because it was a Novak fan who actually started this petition, and I think it's sitting pretty at some 14,000 signatures right now.
Who started it? Sorry,
And
Shahiri. Who started the petition?
it was a Novak fan. I just don't
Okay.
recall the name,
Okay.
but yeah, because when I opened the link, I did recognize that person from
Sure.
Twitter. And,
Okay.
that person is not active these days or for a while. But yeah, because I found it on Instagram and just went down that rabbit hole and I figured out, okay, this makes sense. But yeah, I would be overwhelmed as well to see not only the initiative but the response it gathered. But for him to say, if there is any room for me to travel, I think that's it. That just annoyed me because uh, there is room if he does one thing, which he just does not want to do. And you know, I also look at it. Sure, when it comes to someone like Djokovic, I do look at it from a perspective of him, me wanting to see him, watch him play as much as I can and as much as he can as well, and also compete at the best tournaments in sport. Like I
Yeah,
mean,
that's
at
the
this
thing.
point,
If I was a Djokovic fan, I would be just thinking, please get vaccinated. I want to see you at the US
exactly,
Open. I want to see you get
exactly, and that's
22,
why I
23.
think, yeah, that's why I think a lot of these Novak fans, like the one who quote tweeted your tweet and said that I don't represent all Novak fans. I mean, sure, maybe I don't. I mean, I guess that's she's not wrong there, but I do think that everybody can agree with me on one thing, that we do want to see Novak play the best, the biggest events, and to miss 2 out of 4 Grand Slams, both of them being on the surface he's the best in the world at. I think it is pretty ridiculous. Just all of this just over a vaccine. And I even touched up on this on my long thread, which mostly was well received, and some of them just took issue with it and they just blew it out of proportion. I mean, there's not much substance to debate that with, so they resort to name calling. Oh, you're not a true Novak fan. You're trying to you're trying to be accepted by the Fedal fans. Which, I mean, if my activity from today is anything to go by, that's just not true, right? So what I do want to say is that yeah, we do want to see Novak play at these tournaments, and if he is willing to take painkillers, and he did mention this in his BBC interview that he carefully assesses quote unquote whatever goes into his body, and I just don't know how he had the time to carefully assess the n number of painkillers he took after that match against Taylor Fritz in Melbourne last year, where
Hmm.
he tore his abdomen. And he was good to go with less than a day, and then he goes on to win the tournament. So pretty sure that that took some sort of uh, effort as far as what you call medication goes. So did he really have the time to assess all of that? And mind you, I'm no medical expert, but I'm pretty sure some of them would have some sort of side effects. Maybe you never know, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
But and the vaccine side effect, I don't know where people get these news from. Like people are dropping dead out of nowhere, or it's unsafe. I'm not saying, well, it could be unsafe, sure. To very again, there's a very small percentage of the vaccine doing any sort of harm or damage to people, but it is safe, and nobody has ever said that if you get vaccinated, you're not going to contract COVID. I mean, we're so far into the pandemic, and people don't realize that one thing, which is you get vaccinated and you get COVID, most 95 to 99% of the time you're going to be fine. You're not going to be
Yeah.
hospitalized.
Yeah.
Pretty much. And I think there was a statistic put out by, I don't know, the NHS or the CDC, I'm not sure, but I did see it a while ago that with almost all of the patients hospitalized with COVID are unvaccinated. So, sure,
I
I mean,
think
you can make the argument that someone like Novak, he's so healthy, he treats his body like a temple. But again, it affects other people too. It's not just him in
yeah.
question here. You get vaccinated, you're protecting people around you.
I think
Uh,
what we're saying, though, as well, is that you can be a vaccine skeptic or you can be pro-vaccine. You can be a supporter of Manchester City or a supporter of Manchester United. You can be a Republican, you can be a Democrat or whatever country you're in or whatever political, and you can still care as passionately about Novak Djokovic or any player as much as anyone else. And I said to you before we went on air, I'm a Man United fan, Manchester United fan.
mhm.
When I'm in that stadium, I know the people to my left, irrespective of their views on the vaccine, irrespective of their political views. I would never question whether they desperately care about Manchester United. Why would I? It would be crazy to do so. If they tell me they're
Exactly.
a fan, sure, why not? And if they're in the stadium and they've spent their money and often their hard-earned money and they're crying and they're cheering and they're shouting, I get it. We see it, and then I can have a separate debate with them about the vaccine another time. No problem with that. But it just seems
Sure.
bizarre that people want to conflate the two issues.
Yeah, it is really bizarre. And I mean, as much as people say that, to the ones who wanted to get vaccinated, that you should respect, uh, a funny story, they say you should respect Novak's decision and respect where he's coming from. But they all just lost it when he confirmed that he was playing the Labour Cup. Like,
Mm,
I mean, the Labour Cup, sure, it's a tennis tournament, right? Comprising of Team Europe and Team World. Sure, Roger Federer was the one who, it's his brainchild and all of that. That alone is, I mean, they just think this is Novak is some sort of anti-establishment socialist god who they look up to. He's willing to sacrifice everything for his principles, which, I mean, I don't even know how far that is true, because when he said that he's willing to pay the price, he's out there training for the US Open in hopes of being let in. So you do want
yeah,
to play.
yeah.
So, and
I,
the option is all right there. Even now, if he gets vaccinated, he'll be vaccinated. He'll be fully vaccinated by the time he gets to New York. So he doesn't even have to play Canada or Cincinnati. He didn't do that last year. He was just fine.
yeah.
So
What did you
I don't
think?
get it.
What did you think about the comment from Ben Rothenberg at a press conference?
This was,
I'm just going to read this out, and then you can tell me what you think. Unless there's a swift change in
oh
U.S.
yeah, I'm
immigration.
blocked by Ben Rothenberg. So,
Oh, really? Well, yes, he's a sensitive chap. Immigration law.
yes.
Wimbledon will be Djokovic's last Grand Slam event of the year. US requires vaccination for foreigners to enter, and Djokovic has firmly said he's ruled out getting vaccinated. And here comes the line that certainly got the wrath of Djokovic's partner,
Yes.
entrenching himself as an anti-vax poster boy. Yelena Djokovic quickly responds with, "Excuse me, just making sure that it is noted that you tagged him as the anti-vax poster boy for whatever reason." He simply responded to what his body choice was. I will just get in Ben's response to this, which is, I understand that's his choice, but I'm also saying that his decision to be so firmly against the vaccines that it limits his ability to play tournaments. And whether he likes it or not, he has become an icon of the anti-vax movement. One of the responses to Djokovic's post yesterday said, "Look how many athletes are dropping dead right now. You know that you made the right decision." And it's kind of anti-Fauci, the US guru regarding the vaccine and the coronavirus during the pandemic. So I think there's very little doubt that Djokovic, unwittingly or otherwise, has become a poster boy or has become an icon
I
for the
cannot dispute that at all
Yeah.
because there was a tweet that went out a week or so after he won Wimbledon, if I'm not wrong, or maybe a few days, no, just a day after he won Wimbledon. Someone likening him to Muhammad Ali. And I
Yeah,
think
that was uncomfortable.
I have seen bizarre takes, and then there's this, right? I mean, I don't even want to get into details of how wrong it is, but that really sums it up. And
I
a few
think there's
days
a
later, Novak
difference.
Paul was that person.
Sure, Huey, if you don't mind me saying, there's a difference between standing up for what you believe in and standing up for what is the truth or what is right. They're very different things, you know. I mean,
Yes.
some horrible people in history, and I don't need to mention them, stood up for what they believe in. In fact, you would say
Oh,
that
yes.
the most horrible people on the planet, and we know who they are, the most documented ones at least, they all stood up for what they believed in. Now,
Yes, of
of
course.
course, I'm not putting Novak Djokovic in that category, but
Mhm.
what I am saying is that that doesn't mean it's okay. Um, and comparing it to Muhammad Ali was just, yeah, odd at best.
It was no, yeah, that was just yeah, red flags all over it. And then the reply to that tweet, I think, got almost a million likes.
I think I want to get back to the tennis now, but before I do, I
Yes.
think just one final thing on it would be that I would have liked to have seen him during that interview in March that he gave to the BBC. He was given an opportunity to really firmly put a gap between him and the anti-vax community, and
Yes.
he didn't choose to take it, and that probably left me a little bit disappointed that he said that he, you know, doesn't see himself as a poster boy, and that's fine. But he could have put a firm distance between him and that community
Yes, he
and
should have
other
made it
communities
clear.
that support him too. I mean, if I have people supporting me from from certain communities, I'm sure I would like to put a distance between us.
Oh yes, of course.
Nevertheless, Shuhiri, let's talk tennis for the last 5 or 6 minutes. Let's get back to the main
Yeah.
thing, which is, and let's talk about back to sort of the Djokovic Nadal thing, and also just in terms of the rest of Djokovic's year.
Mhm.
What when you see that you're about to play Rafa Nadal, let's say as a Djokovic fan, what are you feeling? Are you feeling trepidation? Are you feeling excitement? What are you concerned about? What are you excited about?
Well, I'm concerned about my health at this point. And well, yeah. That being said, I guess I'm excited as well because it's just like they're still going at it. But, it's been a decade and a half since the inception of this rivalry. They're still playing at the best tournaments on tour at the top of their game. I mean, both of them. There were only a couple of matches with one of the players being outside the top 10, top 5. Let's put it that way. Yeah, sure. I mean, I guess Roland Garros 2006 would be one as well. But every other match, pretty much, I think, seen both players, at least in the top 10. Um,
Yeah.
and to see them still uh, being in that similar position Of course, uh, the quality is not going to be the same for sure. Uh, I did watch their. I mean, this year their RG quarterfinal. It felt a lot slower than the usual contests. I mean, not just the fact that it was clay, but I have watched. I mean, even our last year's match to an extent. I think it was only it had so much of a bearing or significance because what yeah the headline was, "Oh, Rafa Nadal has been dethroned at Roland Garros." How often you see that, right? So other than that, I think quality wise wasn't the best. Was obviously rules of drama there, and this year it was kind of lackluster in that way. And I'm not trying to let the result impact my opinion too much, but uh, I think if it would have gone 5 sets, then I think it would have been. I think we would have gotten the signature. Uh,
You've got some fans, by the way.
oh
I got
yeah, all of them asking me for a shout out. Sure, you got it.
they
Anyway, so yeah, they have the signature drama that almost all of their Grand Slam matches would have, I guess. And even the second set was so absurd to see Rafa go double two breaks up, and then Novak is just slapping forehands. I've not seen him hit his forehand as fast as he did in that set ever since let's say he turned 30, and he's obviously undergone the elbow surgery and everything, and he lost quite a bit of potency on his forehand, and that sort of held him back on the clay quite a bit, especially that match against Team in 2019. I could see that he
yeah.
was not for quite a while wasn't like really able to keep up with Team, and the
You mean at Roland Garros?
yes, in 2019.
Mm.
And the match itself, I think, swayed so much back and forth because of the windy tornado-like conditions. Let's put it that way. But yeah, so right now, like seeing Novak and Rafa go up against each other without digressing so much, I still think, it's same excitement factor is there for sure, and it's also there is some sort of anxiety as to, oh, what if no, like just thinking of Novak losing any match, it really doesn't make you feel that good. And when you know that there's a good chance that the tournament's going to end here for him, that is, I mean, I'm pretty sure Nadal fans would have the same fears as well, because they know that the tournament's going to end for one of these players. Off late, they're not really met in finals that much, so they
Yeah.
have to lose their last. Few of their last meetings have been in semis or quarterfinals, so that fear
I'm
factor is always there. But yeah,
I'm gonna go off a tangent, and you'll see why when I come back very quickly to
yes.
tennis. I remember in about the year, I think it was 19. I'm a little bit older than you, Shahiri, so it's the year 1996. There was a
Mhm.
Formula One driver called Michael Schumacher. I did not like him. I was not a fan. I was a fan of the British driver at the time, Damon Hill. And then one day he moves to Ferrari, a much lower down team as they were then. I mean, they've had unbelievable success since then, but and he tries to drag them from the depths of despair, if you like, after 20 odd years in the doldrums. But still, I wasn't a fan until one day I'm watching a qualifying session and he throws the car around the track, dragging it somehow to pole position. He was just getting every single last millimeter of energy, if you like, out of that car, to the extent whereby he crosses the start finish line. And actually, he does so with a broken front wing, which kind of epitomized him draining the last depths and drenches of energy from that car. And from that day, I became a Schumacher fan. I had a similar kind of experience with Rafa Nadal in the mid to late 2000s when he was in the French Open going up against Federer in particular in '06 and then '07, I think, finals. I was not really bothered. I wouldn't call myself a Federer fan, but coming from the UK, living in the UK, watching the grass court tournaments, always supporting the British players, whether that be Bates in the 80s and Henman in the 90s and early 2000s, and then obviously a little bit of Murray in the mid to late 2000s as well. I was indifferent, let's say, to Rafa, but he was also someone, he does well at the French, but doesn't do well on the grass. Got to the final in '06, Funnily enough, though, it wasn't '06 when he got to the final. It wasn't even that memorable final in 2008 when I kind of became a fan. It was actually his run to the final and the final itself in particular in '07 when I thought, wow, he's pushed Federer to 5 sets. And I have a distant memory, albeit probably an incorrect one, of him looking a bit limp in that fifth set. And I just thought, he is getting, because I hadn't really watched his French Open runs. They never used to be on regular TV in the UK. And I just saw a player just like I had seen with Schumacher a few years before, getting every single last millimeters of energy from the match and the tournament and his abilities. And then I became a fan. Shriti, do you remember a moment for you or a match for you or even just a year when it was like you became a Djokovic fan?
Yeah, it was when I was really young, and it still surprises a lot of people. But it was in 2007 when all I knew at that point was, you know, Nadal would win Roland Garros and Federer would win Wimbledon, and more often than not, I mean, at least those past couple of years, uh, Rafa would beat Roger on clay, and Roger would beat Rafa on grass. One is the king of clay, the other is the king of grass. And I saw this guy Djokovic, who had beaten Andy Roddick and Rafa Nadal back to back, who were number 3 and 2 at the time in Montreal, and he was going up against Roger Federer in the final. And I just thought, okay, and I usually get behind an underdog pretty easily.
Yeah, makes sense.
So that I thought, okay, this would probably be my tennis origin story. And I didn't watch the match. I was actually here in Chennai at the time, and the final was past midnight, and obviously I couldn't catch it. But I wake up to the news, and the first thing I see when I'm surfing through the channels, I see Novak falling to his knees, and I know, okay, he's won. He's defeated Roger Federer, and I was like, okay, this guy seems decent. I can get behind him, right? Because I mean, I thought it would be fun to sort of stand out from the rest. Everybody I knew who was into tennis was either Team Roger Federer or Team Rafael Nadal, and it was like, yeah, sure, I couldn't get myself rooting for either one of them as much as, okay, I would enjoy watching the finals. And, usually my sister's a Roger Federer fan, and my parents will always say, "Oh yeah, Rafa just beat Roger in Roland Garros," and my sister was like, "Oh my God, when is he ever going to win Roland Garros?" And then Federer would go on to beat Nadal in Wimbledon. And then I was like, okay, like I just don't want to get behind one of these two. I want to find a player for myself to root for.
Yeah.
And it's just, I mean, through the thick and thin, it was 2009 and 10 where, I think Novak was quite lackluster during those couple of years. And then there was this point in time where Novak was with one slam, Federer had 16 and Nadal had 9. Both of them completed the career slam. And Rafa, of course, at the time, I sort of wanted to hand it to him that he is the greatest, because at 24 completing the career slam, winning the Olympic gold, it was like, yeah, I can't. And doing the challenge slam twice, that's another thing that really stood out. And when, especially in the midst of people calling him a clay court specialist, I was like, this is great. And then he was the first to do the surface slam before Novak did it last year.
Yeah.
So he had all of my respect there. And then I kind of knew that Novak was punching way above his weight when he was going up against Nadal in the US Open final, because I really haven't beat Federer in the semis to begin with. Obviously, my hairs were standing up, my heart was racing just, at the prospect of a Djokovic's Federer Slam semis. But I knew that, Federer had beaten him thrice in a row in New York, and that was their fourth meeting consecutively. And I remember Djokovic was up a break 4-2, and there was this point where I think the ball kid drops a ball or somebody falls down there to replay it, and Djokovic hits broken back and he loses the first set. I turn off the TV, I go to bed. And then I wake up. I mean, I don't wake up. My dad wakes me up and tells me Novak won. He saved 2 match points, right? I was like, what just happened? What did I miss? And then for that to repeat the next year, Of course, a different feeling a year later, because I witnessed this guy winning multiple slams, beating the two best players in the world, and then for deja vu to happen again the year after, and then I completely missed that match. But then I was told again by my dad that Federer was up 2 sets, and he served for the match and had two match points in his racket in the fifth, but Djokovic just reeled his way in and he won the next 4 games in a row. And I just, even today, I keep kicking myself for missing matches like that. And then the final, which I mean, I was watching the other day, it was just one of the best matches he's played on a hard court for sure. Uh, Novak, that is so. And that is when I was like, okay, I made a really good choice, because sure, I can see people jumping ship now and getting into this bandwagon, but I was with him through, him going through so many service motions, and his forehand not being as great, just basically losing consecutively to certain players he really shouldn't be. He was losing matches in succession to Andy Roddick, and there was this guy, Olivier Rokas. Out of nowhere, he shows up and he beats Djokovic twice in a row. He almost has him in the Wimbledon first round. I think he's leading by a break in the fourth set or something like that. From there, uh, he's come such a long way, and in such a situation, you almost always bank on this guy to win, no matter who he's facing. It could even be, I mean, what do you call it? Rafa, Roland Garros, and you will have people still saying, "Yeah, I cannot count this guy out." If it was anybody but Novak, I would go for Rafa. And this guy had people on strings when he broke back in the third set of the 2020 final. He was down 0 and 2, and then he gets a break back and he just lets out this huge roar. Everyone's shaking in their boots. They're like, "Oh my God, is this another comeback?" So I think that is probably his biggest achievement, is that people know that he's inevitable. And I knew that and for me, I pride myself in the fact that I've seen this guy much before he got this aura that he's well, it is just so hard to beat him. He's just incredibly clutch, and just cannot count this guy out. He could be two breaks down, third set, or even the fourth or fifth or whatever. He's just gonna claw his way back. He can. That's what we saw with the match against Sinner. He was down 2 sets, and I remember telling him at the time that whoever wins the third set wins the match. Kind of, I mean, partially it's an obvious statement because Sinner just needed a set to win it, but I think he's just given so much confidence in me that he's going to pull through more often than not in such situations.
Um,
Yeah.
the thing is, what I know and what I've learned more than anything is that we need each other. Without this, without this rivalry, without this excitement, it's listen, don't
Yeah,
get me
you lose
wrong.
the
If you could
essence of
give me
sport itself.
if
Yeah.
you can give me another 5 slams, great, wonderful. And if Djokovic loses 5 slams, also great, wonderful. But let me tell you now, um, when I want Djokovic to lose, it's because I'm scared. I'm desperate. It's part of support for my guy, just like it is for you with
Yes.
Nadal wanting him to lose. It's fear. It's respect. It's all of those things. Desperate to
Yeah.
see our person win. Desperate for him to end up with 1 or 2 more slams than the other guy, but it's also because we just desperately we love it. We also love it.
Yes.
And and
Yeah.
and and that's something that I think some people kind of forget, I think, in all of this.
I
And
think that's essentially the soul of sport itself: rivalries, competition.
I actually would hate it. I'm going to bring it back to football again. My team in England used to be the most disliked team amongst anyone. Just hated left, right, and centre. And I want to go back to that. I want to go back to being hated. I just want that to be, because we're not winning anymore. That's why we're not hated
It's,
anymore. I'm
yeah.
desperate for that. Listen,
Yeah.
Trihuri, I have to go. We can talk again another day, I'm sure. And we can talk till we're blue in the
Of
face,
course.
and maybe other things will occur in the next couple of weeks, couple of months.
Sure.
Maybe that he suddenly does appear at the US Open, and that would be great. But of course, I'll be there supporting my man Rafa.
Yeah, that
I'm
really
sure.
depends. If the mandates are just lifted and he goes there, that's great. But I just don't
Yeah.
want to see another scenario where he's handed an exemption. It's all of the
Shrihari,
drama.
I
Yeah.
must go because I've actually got a tennis match to play myself in about 20
Oh,
minutes.
okay.
But
Right.
listen, thank you for your time. Thanks for coming on. Just remind us, where can we find you on Twitter?
It would be Sri Hari Ravi 12.
Wonderful. I'll also retweet you and mention you a few more times. So definitely follow me at JSilk if you get the chance.
Appreciate it. Yeah, it
And
was great chatting
subscribe.
with you.
And like, yeah, thanks for coming on, Shrihari, and we'll speak again soon.
Yep, we shall.
Ciao, everybody. Have a good one.